Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. So happy you're here. And today I'm going to do something a little bit different than what I typically do on my YouTube channel, and I'm just going to kind of talk at you about a certain topic. If you look at the title of the video, you obviously know what I'm here to talk about, which is mostly the reasons why I talk about Harry Potter on the internet. So, if you don't know, I have a TikTok. I actually recently just hit 3,000 followers over on TikTok. Even though, 3,000 is a comprehensible number, it's still kind of uncomprehendable to me. And I've been shooting for this goal for a while. It's very exciting. Doesn't really mean anything besides, a number on a page. But the dopamine hit is nice. And I would love, as I've said in videos before, to eventually make my living talking on the internet, doing podcasts, that sort of thing. So all of that is just a step in the right direction, right? So follow me over there if you don't already. And one of the reasons why I have gained so many followers recently, like I've literally gained, I think, 1,000 followers in the last 2 months or 3 months, is because I talk a lot about Harry Potter. And there's a lot of people on the internet that also like to talk about Harry Potter, but it can be a bit of a controversial subject. People talk about Harry Potter and interact with Harry Potter for a lot of different reasons. And so I just want to talk a little bit more in long form about what my reasons are. If you ever hear me talk about Harry Potter, you will know that I absolutely despise the author of the Harry Potter books. I think that she is actively doing harm to our world. I think that she's a bad person, and I don't want to give her any more success or money or anything than she already has. So I really do try to engage with Harry Potter in an ethical way, meaning that I don't spend any money on anything for Harry Potter that goes into the author's pockets. I actually don't spend money on Harry Potter in general. Like, I already own the books. If I want to listen to the audiobooks, I either already own them on Audible from years ago, or I listen to them through the library. And I've never been one to like buy merch or have any desire to go to Harry Potter World or anything, honestly. So that stuff is like kind of easy for me, honestly, relatively. But what is tough for me is that Harry Potter is still, even though I despise the author, Harry Potter is still a large part of what made me who I am today. And the reason why I want to come on here and make this video is not necessarily to justify myself. I have immense respect for people who at one point were obsessed with Harry Potter, or, it was a large part of their personality, or it made them who they are, who have completely disengaged and who do not like watch videos about Harry Potter. They don't like put the author's name in their mouth, sort of thing. Obviously, I don't say the author's name either, but I do still talk about obviously something that she has created. And some people do believe that doing that is continuing to give this franchise attention, which is an overall negative. I really respect that view. And I think in a lot of ways, I agree with that view. And that you might be like, okay, well, then why do you choose to talk about it? Like, it's not that hard to not talk about Harry Potter. And if that is the way that you feel, that's totally fair. And honestly, I'm happy to hear criticisms from people who have made that decision. And I understand, like, if they do not want to engage in my content ever, even if they want to go as far as to like block me, those sort of things. But what I will say, for me personally, it is not as easy as just don't talk about it. And I'm going to get to a bit more of that in a second, because I want to just first talk about the fact that when I talk about Harry Potter on TikTok, also what I am often doing is criticizing or analyzing critically things in Harry Potter that I either believe were done poorly, could have been done better, or things that I have personal headcanons for that I think are interesting and even more interesting than the actual original franchise itself. One of the comments that I get on my TikToks about Harry Potter a lot is this is a children's book, or it's not so serious, this is a kid's book, or why are you analyzing it like this so deeply? It's a kid's book, it's a children's book. That same sort of comment I get over and over and over again. If I have a video that does well at all, I usually get, multiple, if not like a half dozen of those on every single video. It's interesting because I quite often will respond back, especially if they're being respectful, and say something like, hey, can you tell me why you feel the need to comment this on a video? Because I think for me, for a long time, I believed that people were commenting that because they wanted to like embarrass me in some way, or they felt as though it was embarrassing what I was doing on the internet because it's just a kid's book, like it's not that serious, and that I should just let it go because like why would I spend time analyzing a children's book? And there are some people who think that. And to that I say, the reason that children's books and books written for young adults are so important is because of how they shape people. Again, I said that I have been very, very shaped by the franchise of Harry Potter. And so I think once you're an adult, like now that I am, a 30 something, I think it's actually really important to go back and look at the pieces of media that did have an influence on your personality and on your morals and ideals and those sort of things, and to ask yourself, is this still a good reflection of who I want to be? And if the answer is no, then what changes do I need to make, or what things do I need to like mentally think about or rearrange in my mind or create different thought processes for that will be more aligned with who I want to be today? So I actually think it is incredibly important to analyze children's and young adult media in general. And I will also say that I am a person who tends to engage with a lot of media that is aimed at younger people. I think because I use media as a form of escape, like as an escapism to a degree, I'm not always looking for something that is going to be devastating or really emotional. And not to say that kids' stuff cannot be devastating or really emotional, but there are some things that happen over and over again with children's media, with media aimed at children and young adults, that I personally just enjoy more. For example, the fact that almost often things work out in media, like things work out for the better, for the best, in media aimed at children or young adults. So even if, the journey is tumultuous to get to the end result, you almost always know that you are not going to have a mega depressing end to a book if it is aimed at children or young adults. There's also certain topics that I do not love to read about, and I'm sure you guys can, think about what those things are. But just, the more intense sort of things, I don't often look for in the media that I'm consuming. I feel like life is hard enough. Life is tough enough. I am prone to the sads more than maybe the average person. And to add media onto that is sad or depressing or what's the word? Like nihilistic, that sort of thing. Media that is like that doesn't really help my mental state. And so I do tend to engage with stuff that is for a younger audience in general. So that's just something about me. But to get back to this idea of people who comment, it's just a kid's book, whatever. Some of them, again, are being critical of the fact that I'm being critical, and they think that that's silly because it doesn't matter. It's just a children's book. But something that I've learned is that most people who comment that, they actually do it because it hurts their feelings deeply for something that they hold so near and dear to their heart to be criticized so openly. And I find that really interesting and intriguing. And I almost always try to push back and challenge people to think again about who they want to be and whether this media actually reflects who they want to be. So I think that's just kind of an interesting aspect of engaging with people on the internet. Because often when somebody cares enough to comment, there is a reason behind that, right? And again, I sort of tended to assume that they were trying to embarrass me, like I said, when in reality, it turns out that I'm actually making them feel a negative emotion. Personally, I don't understand people who are adults who still look at this franchise and this series and the things that the author has done and think to themselves, oh, yeah, that's still like 100% positive. I think that there are a lot of things in Harry Potter that are really, really indicative of the time in which they were published. And it's really interesting also this idea of like people saying, why didn't we know that this author was so terrible? Why didn't we know from the beginning? Because in the books themselves, there are tons of indications of like transphobia, racism, sexism, ableism, those sort of things. Like, I hear this a lot with people who talk about Harry Potter. It's like, how didn't we know that she was so horrible? Because there's all these things in the books that are so horrible, fat phobia, all that. And the reality is, those books, at the time that they were published, in a lot of ways were progressive because society was so much farther behind than we are now in terms of respecting people's differences and respecting the fact that there's all types of people and they deserve respect and they deserve love and care and those sort of things. And so when people say, how didn't we know? I don't really get why they're saying that, because the person that you were, the person that the way that society was at that time celebrated sexism and racism and ableism and fat phobia. Like, those things were celebrated. Those things were normal, and if anything, often viewed as positive in some kind of strange ways. Like, for example, the fat phobia, it was an expectation from society that people did not want to be fat. And so when you have fat phobia being used as a link, as a quick sort of, I think, lazy way to say, oh, this character is bad because they are fat. That was the way that society was. Like, that was the way that society treated fat people. And that, like, quick leap that we are supposed to make in our heads of, okay, instead of that character actually having to have negative, bad actions, we can just say that they're fat and we automatically know that that person is supposed to be like a bad person. I'm looking at the Dursleys mostly. I think that it's important to look at the fact and reconcile the fact that those things were normal and those things were celebrated, and that these books did push the boundaries in some ways, but they were also really, really heavily steeped in what was normal at the time. So I find analyzing that to be important. To get back to the reason why it is not so easy for me, like thinking about all those things I just said, about all of the bad things about this series, the reason why it's not super easy for me to disengage with this series is because of my brain. And I actually was inspired to make this video because somebody commented on one of my videos, and I was commenting back and forth with them for a bit about the fact that they have OCD. And one of the things that they really beat themselves up for is the fact that they liked Harry Potter and that Harry Potter was important to them. And it makes them feel like they are a moral failure. The way that their brain works, the way that the OCD like actualizes for them is in giving them shame and making them feel ashamed for having enjoyed that series at one point in their life. And I realized in that moment that I was talking to them and I was trying to say, like, hey, your past self got you to where you are today. And I'm glad that they got you here. And we do need to, I think, give a bit of forgiveness to our past selves for the things that we didn't know anything about, right? I did also realize that one of the reasons why I talk about Harry Potter is because I struggle really hardcore with rumination. And I don't have any specific diagnoses, but rumination is a part of a couple different disorders or mental illnesses, that sort of thing. Rumination, the best that I can describe it right now when I'm trying to, make this video, is that it is intense thinking and thought processes that you have no control over. So I often think of spiral thinking, that's one of the things that I suffer from the most when it comes to rumination, is getting stuck on a thought and sort of like, I think of it as like chasing the thought around in my brain. Again, this is an uncontrollable thing. I cannot keep myself from doing this. I do have some strategies and some skills that I have learned over my, 31 years that help minimize the effects of rumination and help get me out of those loops and not make them, destroy my life as much as they have the possibility of being able to. Because the thing about rumination is that it just, it's like sucks your life away, because you get stuck thinking about things so much that you have no ability to act. Sometimes it looks like doom scrolling. Sometimes it looks like watching the same TV show over and over again, but like dissociating the whole time. Sometimes it looks like literally sitting on the couch, staring into space for like hours. It can be hours. You lose time to this situation. And the thing that Harry Potter helps me with, there's a couple things that Harry Potter helps me with, or like there's a couple reasons why Harry Potter is related to this rumination. One is that I struggle the most with rumination as I'm about to go to sleep. So when I'm sitting there laying in bed, I struggled really hardcore with insomnia when I was younger. I had night terrors when I was a kid. I still have really intense dreams. And sometimes, if I have really intense dreams multiple days in a row, my body is almost like afraid to go to sleep because of how much those dreams affect me even when I wake up. So one thing is that thinking about Harry Potter, and specifically my own headcanons and my own like fan fiction of Harry Potter and how I want things to go, or the relationships that I want to exist, or the situations that I want to see these characters in, is something that I think about as I'm going to sleep to help me get out of other thought spirals. And when I came up with this, it was, gosh, maybe over 5 years ago at this point. When I came up with this strategy, or I believe that I'm sure that I saw different things about this strategy online on the internet or heard it from people. I know that I'm not like the first person to come up with this, but it literally changed my life. I went from it taking me, 30 minutes, an hour, a couple of hours to fall asleep, like laying in bed, listening to whatever noise I need to distract me. I had a partner at the time that I, lived with. So my partner's in bed next to me. I'm not even on my phone. My eyes are closed. It would sometimes take me hours to fall asleep. That went from, again, hours to like, if I lay and think about my Harry Potter headcanons and think about those things, it often does not take me more than 20 or 30 minutes to fall asleep these days. And that change was almost immediate. So obviously for me, that is a coping strategy and a skill that is immensely helpful to my life and necessary for me to continue. But the sort of flip side of this, that is maybe more of a negative, is the fact that I then began to think about Harry Potter more than was healthy in my brain. And at the time, I was really, really against the idea of engaging with Harry Potter, even with my friends, even like out loud online. I have been listening to a Harry Potter podcast for many years. But again, they are also very anti the author, and so whatever. But I didn't ever have any outlet to talk about it and to let these thoughts out. For me, with the rumination, often if I talk about the things that are bothering me, if I talk through this thing that I'm spiraling about with somebody who is like open-minded and considerate and not judgmental, it really helps me. It really like allows me to release the thought and not like spiral about it so much. Sometimes I still spiral about things even if I talk about them quite a bit, but most things, especially inconsequential things, if I can just get the thought out, that like allows me to let it go. And so I did not have any outlet to let go of my Harry Potter thoughts. And so I did find myself thinking about things with Harry Potter, things that I noticed when I was listening to the books, like when I was trying to go to sleep. I found myself like coming up with these different headcanons or like noticing things or thinking deeper about a certain topic and then having a really hard time getting my brain off of that topic. So again, this is like spending mental energy is still spending energy, and I was finding myself spending a lot of mental energy on thinking about Harry Potter. So this thing that had become so positive and so helpful to me was now becoming a negative in other ways. So I realized that I am somebody who needs to process things out loud with other people or to, get rid of them, get rid of my thoughts that way. And so I started talking about Harry Potter on the internet. And again, it has helped me so much because now when I have a thought of something to do with the series, I just get rid of it immediately. I do sometimes think about them, like I do still like to make thoughtful content, so I don't always just, blurt stuff out. But I rarely think about something with Harry Potter for more than a day or two now. When I tell you that I used to have a thought about Harry Potter would sometimes consume my brain for weeks, like that is what we're talking about here, right? This is mental illness. This is not like normal brain functioning. And that's okay. Like that's just how I live. Again, I have my coping strategies. I do the things that I can, but I also accept that I'm never going to be able to get rid of that part of me, So again, the change was so immediate. I had so much more brain space left, and I had so much more brain capacity to work on other things and think about other things. So the thing is that I then found also is that a lot of people like to talk about Harry Potter, and I think a lot of people specifically like to engage with people who are being very negative about the series because they also feel negative about the series. And they also feel like they want somewhere to go and talk about this and be able to talk about their own theories and the things that they hate or the things that they loved, or, find a community that is not a community underneath the author of these books, if that makes sense. So I found a decent amount of success with making these videos about Harry Potter. Does that mean I will do it forever? Hopefully not. Sort of the point of releasing these thoughts and releasing this from my brain is so that I can eventually one day not think about Harry Potter really at all. Maybe I'll keep my same, thoughts before bed, like my headcanons and thinking through those things. Maybe I will. Maybe that will stick with me forever. But maybe I'll be able to move on eventually, come up with something different, get a different story stuck in my brain, something like that. I really do hope, like that is really my hope for myself for the future. And I will say, I didn't talk about this yet at all, but I do have a Harry Potter podcast as well. So when I was trying to figure out how to navigate this rumination, these issues that I was having with rumination about Harry Potter, I was also with a partner who did not enjoy talking about media in general, but especially stuff that they just didn't care about. And Harry Potter was something that they didn't care about. And so I also didn't originally want to talk about it on the internet at all because I was a bit ashamed of the idea of being so stuck in that world, especially with the way that I felt about the author. And so I did start a Harry Potter podcast that I did solo. I never talked about it. I never told anybody about it. And so I released episodes once a month about specific chapters, and I went through and really examined everything and really talked about everything and really got it all out. And I made it until the second to last chapter of the first book. And then me and my partner broke up. I had to move out of his house. My life kind of just turned on its head a bit. And doing the podcast became too much. Like it became too much of a responsibility, even just to myself. And that is actually where I then turned and started to talk about it online because it was so much easier and simpler and did satisfy that feeling and that need that I had even more than doing the podcast did. But I do just want to say that if you are a person who you've listened to this and you thought, oh my gosh, I feel some of the same ways or I struggle with some of the same issues, and I do want to engage with somebody who is looking at it from a critical view. I just want to let you know that my podcast is called If I Wrote That by Megan Talks. Same username as I have on here. You can find that on Spotify if you want. But I just wanted to let you know I have a desire to be a safe landing place for people who maybe struggle with the same things that I do, or maybe just love the series and want somewhere to talk about it that doesn't feel like they are putting money into the author's pocket or giving her any more, building her up anymore. So if that's the case, if that's you, definitely go check out my podcast, definitely check out my TikTok. And yeah, also, if you don't already follow me on YouTube or subscribe to me on YouTube, I would love for you to become part of the Megan Talks family. So with that, I'm done. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll catch you on the next one. Bye.